Hey, howdy, hey! Welcome back to another episode of Regenerative Farming News. I'm your host, Heather Heinrichs, a former journalist turned farmer and passionate advocate for regenerative agriculture. I am very excited to share this week's episode with y'all. I have a couple of really interesting news articles to unpack. First, there was an annual tour of regenerative farms held where farmers from Australia toured the prairies and found encouragement and new ideas to take back home. And an older article I found in the CBC archives from 2023 about farmers discovering and implementing regenerative principles, saying, quote, "They'll never go back." And then I'm joined by professional agronomist and third-generation farmer Kevin Elmy. Kevin brings his university-level agronomy education, many years of experience, and a unique way of looking at the land. In our conversation, he explains how weeds aren't just pests to fight, they're messengers. Each type of weed tells you something about your soil's condition and what it needs to thrive. Beyond that, Kevin shares story after story of the incredible impact he's seen regenerative practices having on Canadian farms, transforming soils, boosting resilience, and giving farmers new confidence in the future of their operations. It's an episode full of practical wisdom, eye-opening insights, and stories from the field. This week, I have an inspiring story from the Sask Today News website about a cross-continental learning adventure that's all about regenerative farming in action. A group of 30 Australian producers recently wrapped up a 3-week tour across Western Canada, meeting with local farmers, ranchers, and soil health advocates to see regenerative practices firsthand. The tour, organized by Graham Rees from Bathurst, New South Wales, builds on previous international visits, like to the US and New Zealand, with plans to explore the UK and beyond. Why Canada? Rees explains it's about reinforcing their own journey back home. Quote, "The principles are the same," he says, end quote, "and witnessing them flourish in such different climates drives home that regenerative agriculture works globally, not just in Canada or Australia." On the ground, Australians didn't just observe, they got hands-on. Quote, "We get out, we get dirty. We're getting down and dirty with the ranchers," end quote, Rees laughed. It's that immersive learning, sensing soil, grazing patterns, water management, that makes the lessons stick. One Queensland cattle producer, Charles Lafleur, admitted that the regenerative intensity he saw in Canada was eye-opening compared to his own operation. Meanwhile, Grace Tudhope says that the Canadian examples sparked new ideas she's eager to try back home. A standout moment was a visit to a Manitoba bison farm, something completely foreign for Aussies since bison don't exist back home. For many, it reframed how they think about livestock management. Gavin Walton, another cattle producer, emphasized that regenerative farming isn't a fad, it's about shifting how you view livestock health, soil life, and long-term profitability. Rees summed it up best, saying, quote, "People in regenerative agriculture think a little differently," end quote. And seeing that mindset echoed across continents reaffirms their own path forward. This tour took regenerative practices out of theory and into a global living ecosystem. This week, I came across a powerful article written in 2023 by Aaron Sousa, a former CBC reporter for the CBC News. It's called "How Traditional Cover Cropping is Cropping Up Across Alberta," and it showcases some inspiring farmer stories that really capture why so many producers say they'll never go back once they've tried regenerative practices. Take Dieter Gagelmans, for example. He grew up cover cropping in Belgium, but wasn't sure how well it would work after moving to Alberta in 2015. On his new farm, New Sarepeta, southeast of Edmonton, he started experimenting in 2021 with mixes of peas, kale, radish, clovers, and chicory. Even in a dry year, he saw almost double the yields he'd expect, 4 to 6 tons an acre instead of 2 to 3. As Dieter puts it, quote, "I'm never going back to a normal cropping system after seeing the benefits of this." End quote. It's not just higher yields. His cows are also grazing cover crop residues, boosting health and producing better milk. As he says, quote, "You take it off and the only thing that's going to grow is your weeds." End quote. Northwest of Edmonton, Raymond Chittick had a similar experience. He learned about cover crops over breakfast with American soil health specialist Jay Fuhrer and decided to try it himself. 7 years later, he's feeding 100 cattle on nutrient-dense pastures built with oats, peas, ryegrass, turnips, and perennials. The results have been so impressive that neighbors, and even his own dad, are now convinced. Raymond laughs that people stop by his farm just to compliment the size and color of his pasture. The article also points out that networking is key. Linda Gorham, Cropping Systems Chair at the University of Alberta, notes that most producers rely heavily on talking with one another, sharing ideas in WhatsApp groups, and adjusting practices to fit their local context. As she puts it, what works in Westlock might not work in Camrose or Lethbridge. Local adaptation is everything. And that's a common theme in these stories. Cover cropping isn't one size fits all. It takes research, community, and sometimes trial and error. But time and again, farmers like Gagelmans and Chittick say that after a few seasons, they'll never go back to the old ways. Before we get to our interview of the week, here's a look at 2 exciting events coming up in the regenerative farming world. First, the Manitoba Forage and Grassland Association's Regenerative Agriculture Conference will take place November 12th and 13th in Brandon, Manitoba. The theme this year is Enriching Land, Lives, and Livelihoods. You can expect keynote speakers, breakout sessions, and a bustling trade show, and even a free kids program so the whole family can take part. Then, early next year, the Holistic Management Canada Annual Conference is happening February 6th through 8th, 2026, in Taber, Alberta. This family-friendly gathering will bring together land managers and farmers of all ages to share practical tools for holistic decision-making, grazing strategies, soil health, and building community connections. And now, I'd love to hear from you. If you know about an upcoming regenerative farming event, whether it's local, regional, or online, tell me about it on the Facebook or Instagram pages for the podcast. Your event tip might be the next one I feature right here. My guest today is someone I'm very excited to introduce to you. He has been recommended to me as Canada's cover crop guru, Kevin Elmy. Kevin grew up farming in Saskatchewan and has spent much of his life testing, observing, and refining ways to work with nature instead of against it. Today, Kevin travels around the world giving presentations and tours on regenerative principles, showing farmers how unlocking the power of soil microbiomes can transform their operations. His message is clear. When you shift your focus from yield per acre to profit per acre, you open the door to real financial freedom. By building soil health and leaning on biology instead of chemicals, farmers can drastically reduce, or in some cases even eliminate, costly inputs. Recognizing his own successes and the power of regenerative farming, Kevin founded Cover Crops Canada and became a passionate speaker and educator across Western Canada. He writes extensively, offering practical advice on how to avoid cover crop failures, soil microbiome restoration, intercropping strategies, and the economics of regenerative systems. Kevin also shares his expertise internationally. This summer, 2025, he traveled to Ukraine with 5 American consultants, 2 American journalists, a German consultant, and a New Zealand consultant, despite the ongoing conflict, to consult on regenerative agriculture. He encouraged large-scale farms to explore regenerative principles and listened to small farmers share how these principles have already transformed their operations. In essence, Kevin Elmy represents the bridge between academic training and practical farm experience and global regenerative leadership. By building soil health from the ground up, he's proven that resilience, productivity, and sustainability can go hand in hand. Kevin's seen firsthand how regenerative practices restore profitability, resilience, and hope to farms across Canada and beyond. I am so excited for him to share that wisdom with us today. And just a quick little warning, I did have some issues with audio quality this week that I am working on to hopefully not have again in the future, so you may find that the audio changes volume at some parts of the interview. Hi, Kevin. Welcome to the show. It's so great to have you.
Oh, thanks for the invite.
You're welcome. So, I did some research on you and I watched a couple of YouTube videos, and in one of them, there was something really interesting that you said. You'd mentioned how in university you had thought that soil microbiology and plant biology was a waste of time. And you had kind of chuckled about it because now you're writing books about it. So, what happened where you shifted so much from thinking this was a waste of time to now this is essentially what you do?
Well, after I finished my degree, I started my postgrad diploma, and I was my area of study was soil chemistry, and so soil chemistry is predictable. It's going back to the 1950s. Agriculture is based on chemistry, so that's the direction I was going. And when when I ended up buying a farm in 1999 and was farming chemically.
Mm-hmm.
Once again, everything was relatively simple math, and it was predictable. When the 1 year when we decided to see how hard we could push our yields, and we took 10 acres to see what canola can do, and on 10 acres we got 920 bushels, so 92 bushels an acre. So it's pretty impressive number. And this is back in 2002, 2003, somewhere in that range. And we had winter wheat that was cracking the 125 on 125 bushels an acre on 20 acres. But during the growing season, if someone dropped something and made a bang, I was out looking for the thunderstorm that was going to bring hail and wipe me out. The risk part of it scared me, and that year we had excellent growing conditions, so that was where we would be on our potentially our maximum yield.
Mm-hmm.
If we had a dry spell, if we had too wet, if we had too things weren't right, and we had inputs in for 90 bushel canola crop, and we only got 40, who gets to pay the bill?
Mm-hmm.
Me. So I said, okay, so yeah, that's great to get this maximum yield, but where is the economics? So I started looking at, the some different alternative crops and management. One of my seed customers asked to bring in a multi-species mix. So we designed a mix for them, and I saw what it was doing to the soil, and I said, I think this could be the next thing. So we started playing around on our farm using these multi-species cover crops, and what it did to the soil, what it did for our soil biology, and then this light bulb went on saying, it's biology that actually runs this show. When we put down the chemicals, it knocks out our biology, it basically makes them go dormant.
Mm.
And we replace it with these expensive inputs that we get to, whether we finance or pay cash in this manner, it's this big expense. So when I started doing some field scale trials and I was doing the economics on it, all of a sudden it was that aha moment of we can use biology, get less of a yield, and work with net dollars per acre. And that's where Dr. Chris Nichols, she talks about the first thing we should do in agriculture is get rid of the word yield. Yield doesn't pay the bills per se, yield to chasing net dollars.
I started cover cropping in 2008, and as I added more and more diversity into the mixes, I saw more good things happen quicker in my soils. And so as that started going, developed more and more experience, then I was able to go out and start going on the road and giving some soil health talks to people across Western Canada.
Wow. So you decided you needed to try this on your farm. You wanted to manage that risk management, but you also needed to stay profitable, like every farm does. And so you tried it, and you're like, hey, this is great stuff. Everybody should know about this.
And the things are, like, when I was going through it, that's about the time we started into soybeans. We're looking for a legume to fit into our rotation. So in 2002, 2003, we started with some non-GMOs, but because of the lack of weed control, we really didn't get into until the Roundup Ready system. And once again, this is that weaning ourselves off of the whole synthetic realm.
Yeah.
And so that was our nitrogen source. We had I didn't own livestock, but neighbors did. So I was working with the neighbors, bringing the livestock to do some winter grazing. When someone comes to me and they say, okay, they want to start this regenerative process, I'll ask them the first thing: what is their goals? And for farmers, it's really scary setting goals because we've been trained for talking about this Y word, yield. And in a lot of cases, now there's more people coming to me and saying, I have kochia problems, I have salinity, I want to protect myself against drought, all those issues. And so when we're getting through goals, to help people on the covercrops.ca website, there is a cover crop assessment sheet, and that is a tricky way of saying goals. So this way it helps producers set goals of what they want to do, what they want to see. So that one of the questions in there is what weeds are growing. And so one of the books that I highly recommend to producers is When Weeds Talk by J.L. McCammon. It's a great little book, and it gives the description of the soil conditions that triggers a certain weed to grow.
Okay.
When we do not have those conditions, the weeds do not grow.
Oh, so weeds are like symptoms. I've heard this before from other people. You can use your weeds to tell you what you need to do with your land.
Absolutely. And so one of the examples I use is, the famous wild oat. How many years have we been fighting wild oats in Europe? A couple hundred years. Here, how long has the land been cultivated because there's wild oats? Yet when we seed down a hay or a pasture, a perennial, after 3 years, there's no wild oats.
Okay.
And so there's, it's a little controversial from the science standpoint because, once again, the understanding of how the system works isn't quite there yet. But there is the system that Dr. Elaine Ingham has come up with when she talks about the fungal bacteria ratio. And if we do a lab test and we just test for the fungal bacteria ratio, we're going to get a snapshot in time. But what we want to do is look at the fungal bacteria ratio as an average on the land to give us or to show us what plants are growing, so that when we are cash cropping and we're doing tillage, we're doing fertilizer, we're doing all of the modern agriculture, even if we're organic and we're not doing the chemical side, but we're still doing tillage, what we're doing is we're driving our fungal bacterial ratio down, and that's because we are damaging our fungi.
Yeah.
When we seed down a perennial forage, that first year we'll use a nurse crop, and that nurse crop we have to grow it because every weed in the farm is going to grow, and so there's going to be wild oats. We'll focus on the wild oats. So the wild oats are growing. In year two, so it overwinters. In year two, we're not doing any tillage. We're not doing any disturbance to it, but our wild oat populations drop dramatically. And in year three, there are no wild oats. Yet after year 3, year 4, so what's happened is we haven't damaged our fungi. our fungi population start increasing, so it starts balancing out our fungal bacterial ratio, and we get over that magical 0.3 pounds of fungi to 1 pound of bacteria in the soil, while oats disappear. Your annual, your early pioneering plants, which we call weeds, they disappear. And your 5, year 6 are perennials. They start releasing less root exudate, so our bacterial numbers start dropping. And if we're not, app grazing or doing some higher end grazing management, what happens is our bacterial numbers start dropping, and then so our fungal bacterial ratio starts rising. Once we get over 1 to 1, now we start seeing rose bush, sage, those woody plants starting to come in, and that's an indication that our bacterial levels are too low. So we'll go out and we'll rip up that field. So the tillage is going to damage our fungi, promote more bacteria, and as we keep tilling, as we keep spraying, as we fertilize, as we use fungicide, now we'll keep eroding that fungal bacterial ratio down, so that when we have that hay field, we break it up. Oats are a good crop to grow on hay breaking because there's no wild oats. And we can do that for a few years, and then all of a sudden wild oats start showing up, and we blame it on the neighbors, we blame it on deer, we blame it on the seed. But it's just, the seed bank is in the soil, and it's going to, it's going to get bigger to grow.
Yeah, so it's kind of like a seesaw, and you need to just keep that balance.
Keep the balance. And so when we look at, so I work with 5 soil health principles. So number 1 is keeping a green living plant in the soil for as many days possible. We need to have increased plant functional group diversity. We need to decrease the amount of tillage we do. We need to decrease our reliance on synthetics, and we need to properly incorporate livestock. If we do those 5, now we're going to be supporting that fungal bacteria ratio.
I've heard that mentioned by other people. I think I heard it in a video by Gabe Brown, where he's talked about like how you have to slowly stop using inputs. You have to, he said, wean your soil off of them. What does that mean that the soil's addicted to inputs?
So this goes back to our microbial activity in the soil. So I think it's Dr. Chris Nichols or Dr. Christine Jones in one of her presentations, one of them, they said that adding synthetics replaces the jobs of the microbes in the soil. So if we've been adding synthetics for 50 years, 30 years, whatever, we have been breaking that soil microbe plant interaction that's been developed over tens of thousands of years with I'll use in quotes, a quick fix. But that quick fix always has a cost, and in this case, we're taking jobs away from microbes. So that if we go cold turkey and go to know if we've been high tillage, high synthetics, and we go cold turkey, it's like a drug addict going cold turkey. There's going to be some good days, there's going to be some bad days. But if we can wean off, if we can use some different supplementation to take the pressure off, then it works. And so the whole idea of the organic system, the organic world, you have to go through your transition for those magical 3 years. And what I recommend to people that are going to be converting to organic is seeding down a short-term perennial blend of a legume, a grass, and a forb, keep it in for 3 years. Then when we terminate, we have to be mindful of how we terminate, so we're going to maintain that fungal bacteria ratio. So if we can do it that way, then now, once again, we have this cushioning of that blow of going from a high synthetic input to a minimal synthetic input without taking a huge hit on the profitability.
Right. So because of using synthetic inputs, that's replaced in the soil the nutrients and the access to what the plants need to grow. And so in order to replace it, you have to slowly shift from one to the other because you can't just replace it all at once.
You can. There are some tricks we can do to help make everything up, and this is the use of some compost extracts, using some of these biostimulants.
Mm-hmm. John Kempf, he's done a lot of great work in the United States with regenerative principles, and one of the things that he said, the greatest return on investment on anything you can do is biological seed treatment on the seed.
Oh, interesting.
And that's a $3 or $5 input, and you can get the biggest bang for the buck from that.
So, yeah, because you're out there with the seeder anyway, so it's not like you even have to do another pass with another machine.
There's a great couple in Western Australia that I was fortunate to meet, Di and Ian Haggerty. And what they've done is they're at the time they were the largest regenerative farm in the world. I don't know if they still are or not, but one of the things that they've done, it was a year and a half ago, last March. They had some land that come up right beside them, and it was 1,500 acres, so a significant amount. But it was high tillage and high synthetic practices up to when they bought it. So they have a flock of sheep, so they ran the sheep across it in March. They then seeded it in, was it April or May? And what they use is a compost extract on the seed in the furrow, and then they do a foliar. So they have the compost extract, they put some vermicast, they put down some humates, some kelp, and some molasses, and that's what they use in their mix. And after that first year, because they were feeding their soil with carbon and some biological, like adding some more biology to it, those 1,500 acres had the same or very similar yield to the rest of their farm that's been regenerative farmed for 22 years.
You look at Di and Ian Haggerty, their whole fertility program, I'm looking for the right word, because they're not putting down any fertilizer, but they're just using compost extracts, using some vermicast, some humates, some kelp, and some molasses, and that's they use that as their seed dressing in furrow, drench, and foliar.
For any listeners who may not have recognized those terms, a seed dressing is an application that a farmer can put on the seed just before it's planted. In furrow means a fertilizer that is usually granular that goes down with the seed when it's planted, and drench is a liquid that will go on at the base of the plant, and a foliar is a treatment that goes on being sprayed on the leaves of the plant.
So this is really exciting stuff. It seems like it's quite obvious the difference that these practices can make, and yet they don't seem to be I don't think anybody would call this mainstream yet. How would you describe the growth of regenerative farming? I mean, it's gaining ground, right? But how, from your experience, how do you see the last, 10 to 20 years, the growth of regenerative farming?
20 years ago, I was crazy. People said, no, this doesn't work. We need to add fertilizer. But another great book I recommend to people to read is An Agriculture Testament by Sir Albert Howard. Mm. He was a botanist in England in the 1930s and 40s, and he got frustrated because the English farmers, they were using this newfangled technology called synthetic nitrogen that farmers are going to. They were going away from good agronomy to using these synthetic inputs, and ended up moving to India. And in India at the time, there was a large hoof and mouth disease outbreak, except for his farm, because he had a active biological system. The hoof and mouth did not affect his farm, so it just can prove that a healthy biological system it solves a lot of the problems that we have in agriculture.
Oh, even fights disease then in some cases.
Oh, absolutely. When you look at clubroot, when you look at fusarium, when you look at what other the big problems we have, they're all based on we've managed for them. This is the thing that I hope maybe I talk about is well, isn't it funny that the weeds are thriving and our crops keep wanting to die? So what does that tell us? It tells us our management is for the weeds, not for a crop. And this is one of the things that Nicole Masters talks about is when you have a flush of weeds, go out and test the Brix level of your weeds and check the Brix of your cash crop. If the cash crop Brix is higher than the weeds, you don't have to worry about the weeds as much. If the Brix of the weeds are higher than your crop, what is the problem? That means the Brix is a measure of the photosynthetic activity in the plant.
Mm-hmm.
Why are the weeds healthier than our cash crop?
Right.
Because we are mismanaging the system to give the weeds the ecological advantage.
Yeah, the weeds are trying to fill that gap that we're leaving there. Is that a good way to put it?
Absolutely. The weeds are always trying to fix the soil, and this is where, for thistles, thistle is a great example that once again, as long as we've been farming, thistles have been popping up, and thistles are an indication that we have compaction issues. We have some anaerobic soils, and these thistles are able to push air down into the soil and break through these compaction layers. And if we keep killing the thistles without addressing the compaction and anaerobic conditions, they're going to keep coming back. My buddy Patrick Fabian down at Tilley, Alberta, he did some deep ripping, and one of the experiments he did is he had some hydrolyzed fish and some humates, and so he would do a couple passes, flick the switch to apply it, do a couple passes, and then turn it off and do a couple passes. Dr. Zanala out of the Chinook Applied Research Association heard about it, so she went down and she went to go see what was going on, and she was walking across the field with Patrick, and she stopped and she took some baby steps backwards, and she pointed at the line. She said, "What'd you do different on this line, on this side versus that side?" And he laughed. He said that was exactly where the treatment was. So he did a really good video of it where he put the fish and the humates, and in the Tilley area, fairly high clay, high mag soils. So where he ripped with the fish and the humates, he would pick up the soil clod that came up and it would just crumble in his hand. Whereas where he didn't, he just did the rip. He was like 2 bricks that he brought up from the soil profile.
Oh, wow.
The thing, it was hugely dramatic. I said the only thing that he missed was having a cover crop seeded at the same time, so that this way the roots could get down there and maintain that soil integrity that he loosened up. Because the living root in the vegetative stage is, if anybody's going to do one thing, that's what they do. Mm-hmm. So if they're growing wheat, put in a little bit of winter wheat in with your wheat in the spring, and this way you have that vegetative plant growing underneath the canopy. It changes a lot of things in a positive way for your operation.
Is it really just some simple steps like that? Like it can be just as simple as adding winter wheat while you're already seeding your wheat crop, and that can already start the process for you?
Well, I've been working with people south of Swift Current that I told them put 10 pounds of winter wheat in with their durum. Their durum with very modest inputs, like we're talking 30 pounds of nitrogen, 10 pounds of phosphate. Mm-hmm. Their durum crop was mid-thigh high with a couple of inches of rain, whereas right across the road where the person had a traditional agronomist, their durum was boot high.
Oh, wow.
So it was that dramatic, and the comment from the neighbors were saying, well, that's easy to explain because the rain stopped right at the road. You hear stuff like that. There's one of the guys early on up in the Castor area. He seeded some radishes after his peas. They had some decent rain in the fall, so he seeded some radishes after his peas. And they only got the size of your pinky finger for size, and he wasn't very happy with me. Mm-hmm. He didn't tell me that, but he said, I've wasted money. This guy doesn't know what he's talking about. He grumbled all all winter because he'd drive by the fields going to work. And the next year he seeded oats on both fields. He had land on both sides of the road, so he seeded where the radishes were not. And he jumped over the road and went to where the radishes were, and he said, "Oh, the soil is a lot looser." "Oh, okay, well, loose soil doesn't make me money, but well, okay, what do we do?" So he seeded it, and of course he drives by those fields all summer, and he said he didn't see much of a difference. He started combining, and he said there was a 50% yield difference, where he put the radishes had higher yield. And once again, when I tell people you can increase by 50%, no. But he said it wasn't, you didn't need a yield monitor to see the difference because, with that more porous soil, you had better water infiltration. He brought up a little more calcium. He released more phosphate. It just, that next crop had that next level of jump in it.
You couldn't see my face while you were saying all of that, but the look of shock that I had when you said 50%, my jaw hit the floor. I keep hearing these stories. I've interviewed a few farmers now from around Alberta and Saskatchewan, and I keep hearing the difference that this makes. But it still seems so incredible. Is that why you think more farmers struggle to latch on to these ideas? Is because it just seems too good to be true?
There's a few of the caveats on it. And so, most people will see, I tell them you can see the similar yields with less inputs. Do I tell people that you're going to double yields? No. But, for dramatic responses, yes. If you have these areas that are, well, let's take another step back. I always make the joke about, when people come to me, they never come to me with their good land. They always come to me with the stuff that there's, production issues where they can't get yield out of it. But so joking aside, I really don't want the good land because that's where, I might be able to get, a little bit of quality, maybe get a little bit of a yield bump, but you're not going to see much. But in these areas, I have a lot of people that said, I got plants growing. I said, okay, that's kind of what we wanted. He said, no, you don't understand. Nothing grows here. Now we actually have something growing besides weeds. So
you don't
it's the level.
Nothing grows here.
and sadly, it's happened more than once. Dealing with the 100 colony up at Bigger.
Yeah.
They were saying that, the kochia, they have different modes of resistance in their, of herbicide resistance in their kochia, and they can't get yield. And he said, okay, he's been given the land from the crop boss for 3 years. Okay, what can we do? And in the first year, he said the kochia was dying by itself because we changed management.
So what did they do? I know kochia is a massive problem everywhere. That's like one of the main weeds that most everybody talks about.
It's so simple, because when you look at when weeds talk, what conditions does kochia like? It likes low available calcium, it likes high sodium, it likes high nitrate. And so what we need to do is, if that's what that plant likes, we need to take it away. And, the argument is, well, we did a soil test. We have 8,000 pounds of calcium in the soil. But because we have 2-to-1 swelling clays in our soil, that calcium is, a lot of it is on the outside of our clay particles that are in your cation exchange past the materials in the soil. So as our soils dry out and they shrink and we get those cracks, that means those particles are really tight together and the roots can't get in between to get that calcium. And when we have high sodium, that's going to be something else that's going to make our soils harder. When we have high magnesium, that's going to make our soils harder, which is going to interfere with our calcium availability.
Yeah.
Whereas when we have mycorrhiza in the soil, we have living roots, we have, the soil health principles. Okay, now we can get in the hyphae of the fungi can get into those tighter areas to get more calcium out.
Okay.
When we have high sodium, that's mainly because when we start doing some digging, so I use a square shovel when I'm out in I jump on the shovel, I get a really good idea of where hard pans are, and most of the time it's at the magical 3 inches. So I take a look at that hard pan layer, and I take a look to see what the roots are doing. If the roots are hitting it and going straight sideways, that means that's over 300 pounds per inch of density. So that means no roots are going to get through it. So that means the water and the salt are going to be staying in the top 3 inches. By having some perennials in there, like chicory, like sweet clover, like you go through the list of radishes. Now we're going to be able to get the tappers through. We can crack that hard pan. Now we can allow that water to infiltrate deeper into the soil, so that's going to wash our salts down. We're going to be using water at lower levels, so that's going to keep the salts down. Having a mycorrhizal plant is going to bring more calcium, and if instead of haying those areas, if we just mow it or clip it or just let it the snow push it down and create soil armor on it, that's going to stop evaporation, so that's going to stop bringing up more salt. All that residue is going to then move calcium from deep in the soil profile, bring it up, and between that and the mycorrhizae is going to get more calcium available. And having that living root for more than 90 days, 80 days of the year, having a biennial perennial in there, that's going to tie up your nitrates, so that's going to stop triggering of those weeds. Now, what kochia?
Yeah, it's going to be gone because that's not the conditions that it thrives on.
What kochia? I don't have any kochia. Yeah. It disappeared.
It disappeared. Wow, this is fascinating. So the plants really give you a great idea of where your soil is at. But
absolutely,
it's going to be very helpful as well.
Yeah, it gives it shows balance. But by looking at red root pigweed and lamb's quarters, those are nitrate accumulators, so that tells me that your free soil nitrate is too high. If we have stinkweed, if we have flicksweed, those are telling me that soil nitrate is too high. So we need to have a living plant growing in the fall to tie up that excess soil nitrates in the fall. So having these brassicas or winter cereal or even some oats growing from this September 1st on is crucial. Never mind the fact that having something green and vegetative, the soil microbes can take some of those root exudates and winterproof their soil aggregates, their homes, so that in the spring, when we go through the freeze-thaw cycles, they're going to stay intact. So then in May, when we have that next crop growing, they're not starting at zero on their soil aggregates. They already have their base soil aggregates started. Then we can be building on them. And this is where we really start building on our resilience in our system.
Oh, wow. And so that's why it can make such a difference in even the first year of doing something, is because you're already getting that much of a head start on your first crop of the next year.
Absolutely. And so what I'm always looking at is this time of year, whenever I look at a soil test, when I see soil nitrate levels, it tells me how broken this person's system is. So there was another neat little story where a producer in western Manitoba, they once again grew peas. Peas are a good spot because you grow your peas, you take them off relatively early, you get some fall moisture, and then you have opportunity to seed some fall cover crops. So he was growing he's going to grow oats next year. So I work on like the three sisters, the triangle of functional plant groups are grasses, are legumes, and broadleaf. So he was growing peas. He was going to grow to oats. So what are we missing? We're missing a broadleaf. So he used some radishes, got the peas off, seeded radishes, and right before freeze up, went out and soil sampled. And when he got the results back, his soil test said for him to grow oats, he's going to need to just pour the fertilizer onto it. He said, okay. So in the spring, he went out and he went back to the same spots, and he knew he was in the same spots because they were the hole that he dug for the fall cover or fall soil test.
Right.
So he grabbed his soil sample right beside it, sent it away. Soil test came back and it said he needed nothing for fertilizer because the radishes soaked up all that free nutrients in the soil in the fall, And when it died and rotted in the spring, it released all those nutrients for that next crop.
Wow. Something that I keep hearing, and that, in my farming experience, something that I was always told and was taught is that there is so little moisture that there isn't room to grow more crops. And it just is blowing my mind that not only is they don't take away the moisture or the nutrients, they use it, convert it, and put it back in a more usable form.
Absolutely. So now when we start talking about an overwintering cover crop, that's a different story. And this is from my experience. That was it must have been 2015, 16. So we went through a couple of really super wet years, but then the tap turned off, and we had Kaylee that overwintered. And the forecast was first part of May we were going to get the swift current wind come through, so it was a 60-70 wind for a week, and it was going to be 32 degrees, which for the Yorkton area for the first part of May is very unusual. And I said, I'm smart. Look at this. I have this armor over my soil. I have the winter triticale growing. I am so smart. So the temperatures finally dropped back to the normal. So in that 20 range, the winds dropped. And the winter triticale went from being about 6 inches high to knee high. And I said, I'm so smart. Went out and seeded my cover crops. Well, the winter triticale protected me from the wind, but the winter triticale was using water and growing, because going from 6 inches to knee high, it takes some water, and it dried out my soil profile. And so the top 3 inches of the soil were dry because triticale used it. So I had to scratch in my small seeded cover crop into dust, and it didn't grow until I got a rain, which was about 4 weeks later. So anything that's overwintering, I tell people, and once again, drought will bite anybody at any time. So I always tell people on overwintering stuff, monitor your soil moisture. So if it is a dry spring, terminate the cover crop, overwintering cover crop as soon as you can. If it is a wet spring, keep it growing. It's going to use the water, and it's going to allow you to drive on the soil surface to actually get the crop in without ponding water.
Right. So it's just a monitoring situation where you can do it, but you just have to keep a close eye on it so that you can adjust your strategy if needed.
Absolutely. And so going back to oats, I love oats. There's an oat guy growing some oats, and I was wondering about a relay cover crop. So relay cover crops is growing 2 crops with the intent you're going to harvest one, and the other one's going to continue growing after you harvest the first one. So I told him to put some, he was in a wetter area, so I said Italian ryegrass in with your oats. So he did that, and he said it was going good. He saw suppression of weeds, and crop was looking good. And then in the end of August, it started raining. It wouldn't stop raining. So, you go out and check, and no, it's too muddy. Finally, it stopped raining. It was middle of September, and he said he went out and checked. The oats were dry. The straw was a little raggy, but he said, okay, there's a window. Let's get it off. Went out and started harvesting. He started harvesting. He's looking down and straight cutting oats. And there was a nice green mat of the Italian ryegrass underneath. And he said, oh, isn't that pretty? So he's combining away, and the neighbor, of course, saw him out in the field. So he jumped in his combine, went into the field, got off the approach, went into the field, and sunk his combine down to the axle. So what that Italian ryegrass was doing, because Italian ryegrass is slow establishing and didn't compete with the oats at the beginning, but as it was raining in the fall, that's about the time it was waking up. So the oats stopped using water, the Italian ryegrass continued using water, and it created a bit of a rebar into the soil, so that this way it was able to support the weight of the combine. Whereas the neighbor, where if he didn't have anything underneath it, that nice clean crop, all that water just started accumulating in the soil and had the compaction, so it just made soup out of the top part of the soil and would not hold the weight of the combine.
I have been really fascinated at learning how these principles improve water infiltration. I just always thought of water infiltration as specifically for, just retaining water in the soil for future use, like not runoff and not and I never thought about it impacting when you could get out in the field, but that just makes perfect sense.
Oh, absolutely. And the weed pressure. I talked to a producer up in northeast Saskatchewan, an organic producer, and he was telling me about his weeds, and guess what? It was a red root pigweed, lamb's quarters, cleavers, and wild oats. And I said, okay, so once again, a little wetter area northeast, so instead of using winter wheat, it was using Italian ryegrass. He said the yield where he had the Italian ryegrass, the oats were yielding probably 2 bushels less, but his wheat pressure dropped by 80%.
Oh, wow. That's
so the 2 bushels, the 2 bushels may be weeds. What is your goal? What are you trying to do? And, in a lot of cases when you're starting out, I like using cover crops that will terminate during the winter. When we start looking at, drought tolerance, all of a sudden Italian ryegrass maybe isn't the best one to use. We have to use winter wheat or winter triticale. Then now we have to terminate in the spring. That's one of the steps that we're probably going to have to do anyways in conventional terms. But it's something where, anytime we can have these cover crops that self-terminate, it makes life so much easier.
Yeah.
Something that I wanted to get around to asking you is that with all of the experience you've gained with your farming regeneratively yourself and seeing the results on so many other people's farms, you've really done a lot of teaching of this and grown a big career here in Canada. And then recently you took all of that experience and you went to Ukraine. And I wondered if you could tell me a little bit about that trip.
So there's a company there, Travel Light Agro, run by Roman. I was first approached by Dr. Jill Clapperton asking if I'd be interested in going to Ukraine to go out and observe their farming practices and to see how regenerative practices could be added to their management system. So that was the first part of June. On the 19th of June, jumped on a plane, went over to Ukraine. There was 7 consultants from. There was 5 from the United States, 1 in Germany, 1 from New Zealand that we went over, and we toured around in a van. They had usually 3 soil pits at each operation. They're all large corporate farms that we were visiting, and so very chemical, very high tillage type of mentality. So we were looking at the soil pits, and every one that we went to, they were doing lots of plowing, they're doing lots of monocrop, they're doing lots of modern agriculture. But I kept asking, where are the cover crops? Where it would have they would be able to avoid a lot of these inputs and passes if they would focus on their soil health. So one of one of the people that I've been chatting to prior to that was a researcher from Odessa, and she's now in South Carolina. So Dr. Luda Sharma, and she was coaching me on what to expect over there, and she was introducing me to some Ukrainian farmers that were absolutely killing it, doing some beautiful work over there with cover cropping, regenerative farming, and still growing corn, but getting some incredible yields, driving some huge profit margins by doing it that way. So when the Ukrainian corporate farms were telling me that, no, you can't do this here, then I would start throwing some of these names at them, and they all of a sudden changed the subject. So it was interesting from the standpoint of from that standpoint. The other thing that I was shocked with was the lack of grazing animals out there. Basically, when Ukraine declared independence and they went from the communist system to a democracy, the land was divided up among the residents, which
Mm-hmm.
then they were able to sell it or keep it or do whatever they wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And same thing with the beef animals. A lot of the beef animals were distributed through the town, so everybody had a cow, and it, the grazing herds just aren't there from what we saw.
Mm-hmm.
So it was interesting from there. So I was once again challenging them, saying, where are the grazing animals? Why don't you have beef herds? And they said, well, we don't have a market, infrastructure built up for it. And I said, well, if the one farm is a 1.25 million acres, I said at 1.25 million acres, I think you can afford to put up a processing plant somewhere to close that production loop.
Oh, yeah. That's interesting. So there's a lot there that they still have to build, and they kind of sound like they just needed some encouragement to really go in that direction.
Yeah, exactly. And once again, as we're driving through the countryside, then you would see, the small, very small fields. So we're talking about, maybe 10-acre fields. So I'm guessing that was a small family farm that they had a better rotation. Were they still doing tillage? I have no idea. Were they using cover crops? No idea.
Mm-hmm.
But after listening to some of the success stories and meeting some of the producers there that are farming regeneratives, they're top of the curve. And when I say top of the curve, it's there's always room to get better and to improve, but they're in a lot of cases ahead of what we're doing here in Canada.
Mm-hmm. Did you get to see any of those regenerative farms that you say are ahead of the curve, or did you just hear about them?
I talked to the producers when they came to the conference at the end,
Mm-hmm.
and the things they're doing. Well, the one producer has the largest setup of Johnson Sioux bioreactors in the world. He's just cranking out all this compost and using compost extracts, and he has it figured out. So to hear that and see some of the pictures of what he's doing and under the conditions that they have to put up with, it's absolutely incredible and inspirational.
Yeah, I guess because when you think about it, they really have the pressure of the war kind of hanging over them at every moment of the day. And we definitely
Oh,
say have
absolutely.
that here in Canada, so kind of makes us look a little bit bad, I guess, that way.
Well, yeah, exactly. And this is, Sasha. He said there's a couple times he had to leave the farm because the front line was getting a little too close for comfort on his farm, so he had to leave a few times. And he would go back and do what he has to get done. And okay, when he gets into the tractor, all the GPS equipment disappeared on him, and
Oh no.
so yeah, there's some definite challenges that they're putting through. But once again, you take the pressure off of chasing $400 of inputs per acre.
Mhm.
You take that off of the table, and all of a sudden, farming becomes a lot more fun.
Right. Yeah. It really is it really matters what your goal is in
Absolutely,
farming.
absolutely. And so, if someone comes up to me and asks me to sell them on becoming regenerative, and I said, well, number one, I don't do that. I don't sell people on it. Um, if you want to know some of the reasons why, I'll tell you. And if you just looking for an argument, well, look for someone else. But
Mhm.
in the big picture, if someone says that no, this is what their goal is to produce a 60 bushel canola crop and a 90 bushel wheat crop, so be it. That's your prerogative. That's your business model. That's what you do. If you're looking at increasing your net dollars per acre, okay, now we can have a chat and talk about how we can change management to get a different outcome.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, that sounds like that was a really interesting trip for you and puts quite a different perspective on uh how lucky we are here in Canada. At least there's some challenges there that we're not having to deal with here at the moment anyway. Um
Absolutely, and it was a great eye opener, and it was a really good education for me, and once again coming back, my appreciation of what we have here has been bumped up, and and the respect of what the Ukrainian population's putting up with, once again, just goes to that next level for me.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Kevin. Before we wrap up, where can people find more of your work or connect with you if they'd like to learn more about cover cropping?
Well, there's the website that I've set up is www.covercrops.ca. That's I really don't spend a lot of time updating it. On Facebook, it's either Kevin Elmy or Cover Crops Canada. I have a YouTube channel with Cover Crops Canada. So yeah, there's usually if you do some Google searches on my name, a lot of interviews and articles. I do some writing for Seed Canada. I do some for a couple other magazines. I've done some. I used to write for Grain News for quite a few years. So there's a lot of my stuff out there. So if anybody was interested in looking, and if they want to reach out, just pop an email or message, or there's a whole bunch of ways of getting a hold of me.
Fantastic. Well, I feel lucky to have had you on the show today. Again, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for sharing your insights today. It's been a real pleasure having you on the show.
Well, it's a pleasure being on with you.
And that's it for this week's episode of Regenerative Farming News. Again, I apologize for the sound quality differences. I'm working on a new way to do my interviews that will hopefully be much, much better. I hope you found today's stories as inspiring as I did, from Alberta farmers who say they'll never go back, after seeing the benefits of cover cropping, to the wisdom Kevin Elmy shared about how even weeds can reveal what our soils need. I'll definitely be inviting Kevin back on the show in future episodes to dive deeper into his vast knowledge and explore more ways farmers can boost their profit per acre. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to follow the podcast so you never miss an update. And if you feel like keeping the conversation going, you can find me on Facebook and Instagram, where I share more stories, updates, and resources from the regenerative farming community. Together, we can grow healthier soil, stronger farms, and a more resilient future.